Steel Curtain Network.
Touchdown! Touchdown para Calvin Austin! El Monte Washington es arma. ¿Quién más? ¿Quién más? DJ Watt!
What's going on, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, and welcome back to this very special 2025 NFL Draft Roundtable. This is not the preview, but it is the preview crew. I'm Jeff Hartman, joined by Dave Schofield and Bryan Davis. The Steelers have made their pick. They stayed at 21, and they have selected Oregon defensive tackle, defensive lineman, whatever you want to call him, Derrick Harmon. I know one guy's really excited. Dave Schofield, what's up?
What's up is I'm just happy that the Steelers took the position they should have taken in the first round if it fell right for them. There was a couple players I would have liked there. I would say even 2 weeks ago was probably my number 2 choice, but actually kind of swapped out to the number 1 choice leading up to it. Roy Countryman kind of convinced me that with some of the stuff he was saying, and along with Jeremy Betts. But I liked both him and Grant. Grant went off the board first. This was who was there. I was just hoping he made it to the Steelers. He made it. It made sense to make that pick right there, right then, not trade back. Get your guy. I'm glad they didn't reach for a quarterback. They did the right thing right there.
All right, Bryan Davis, what's up?
Loved the pick, gentlemen. I just absolutely loved it. Now, I was in more of the Kenneth Grant camp beforehand because I've been talking a lot, of course, to Kevin Smith. And KT, the coach, just said this, that they are both fantastic picks, but if you want one more ready for 2025 for the long run, it might be Kenneth Grant, but the more complete would be Derrick Harmon. I was not in. I really thought that Nolan to me would have been a guy that I didn't want. For some reason, and he went earlier. And I was shocked that he went earlier. I thought that was a guy that kind of would have felt like, to me, not to everybody, but to me, a consolation prize. Derrick Harmon's not a consolation prize. It's the guy they wanted, and you don't have to be a skill player to make a lot of impact, and I think this guy does.
All right, so I want to give everyone a little rundown in case maybe they forgot or in case they didn't watch or listen to the draft or listen to our day one live stream where we were talking about as this broke down. So the defensive lineman, so Mason Graham out of Michigan, we knew he was going to be off the board. He went to Cleveland at pick 5 after they traded with the Jaguars at the 2nd overall pick. Then there weren't a lot of defensive linemen taken. Then all of a sudden, Kenneth Grant goes to Miami at 13. All right, so he's off the docket. Then at 16, here goes Ole Miss Walter Nolan to the Arizona Cardinals. And so then the Steelers really only had one real option left. They'll tell you that that's who they like the most. I know there's a lot of people, like you mentioned, Roy Countryman and Jeremy Betts. Everyone has their favorites, but nonetheless, Derrick Harmon is the Steelers pick for 2025, round 1. Now, as of right now, as we're recording this, the Steelers still don't have a round 2 pick. They do have a round 3 pick. We'll talk about that. But let's talk about Derrick Harmon and what this pick means for the Steelers defense this year. It comes down to expectations. What are your expectations for a rookie in round 1, Dave, to actually contribute this season?
Well, I thought there would be the potential, especially since he had played nose tackle at Michigan State. He was a little bit heavier when he did that he could be, the nose for when they're in base and a rotational tackle, defensive tackle when they're in sub package, which is 70% of the time, a la Javon Hargrave, even how you would see with Keanu Benton last year. That I thought that would be the case. Coach Tomlin in the press conference afterwards kind of scoffed at the idea of him being a nose tackle, which surprised me. But to me, as I said on the Breaking News podcast, if anyone's got that already, that my goodness, if you have Benton and Harmon and Hayward, there's times where Cam Hayward would line up as the furthest inside with all 3 guys. You really could rotate any of those guys in or out along the line is kind of what you have with those guys. So I don't know exactly what they're going to do. It'll be intriguing to see what they do. I know we're about 90 days away from training camp. Until we can really see what happens there, it'll be intriguing to see how they do it. But the thing about defensive tackle is it's not an all or nothing like offensive tackle. He's going to be on the field. The question is, how much is he going to be on the field? And, and as that increases throughout the year with everything going on. So I do like that I expect him to get unless there's, an issue going on I expect him to get significant snaps from the very beginning in week one. I'm not saying, even if he was one of the even if he would be the lineman, whether he'd be at nose or tackle in base defense, you couldn't really even say he's a starter because it depends if they start off in base or in sub package. So to me, it's more about how often he plays, and I think he's a guy that's going to see pretty good playing time right off the bat. And I feel it's an upgrade over Larry Ogunjobi is what you really have.
That's fair. Bryan, what's your expectations for the young man?
Larry Ogunjobi's gone. Who else do you have? You have Isaiah Loudermilk. You have Logan Lee. You have Montravius Adams. You have Dean Lowry. You have the guy that I still cannot pronounce, Easy Otimoa from Jacksonville. But if you look at our lads right now, they have Derrick Harmon already penciled in at the defensive end position. I really think that you would see, you never want to rush a guy, but there's an opening at that defensive end position or defensive tackle position, whatever you want to call it, where Larry Ogunjobi played. And there's really no one, unless you go ahead and pick up like a June free agent. I just don't really see anybody better than Harmon right now. So I would probably say that he's a guy you're probably going to see. And I get the rotation thing, and I agree with what Dave said, but I think you're going to see him really be a starter right away.
Yeah. And for me, it doesn't matter the position necessarily. When I see a first round draft pick, I want them to contribute in some way in year one. I'm not expecting him to be a starter. I wasn't expecting Troy Fautanu to be a starter last year. If it turns into that, fantastic. That's great. But at the same time, I'm hoping the young man's able to come in. He's able to contribute in some way. I'm sure he'll play special teams as well as he does defensive situational football, sub packages, whatever. I think this was a smart pick. The Steelers did have options. So some of the players that were on the board when the Steelers did make their pick, they could have taken Marion Hampton, the running back out of North Carolina, Matthew Golden, wide receiver, cornerback Will Johnson. And at the time that they made this selection, all quarterbacks not named Cam Ward were available. Now, as round one continued to play itself out, Jackson Dart gets drafted as the Giants trade back up into the first round, but they could have taken any one of those quarterbacks. Dave, if there was a position that you thought the Steelers could go instead of defensive line, which was it?
Corner or safety. So I'll say defensive back.
Okay.
They could have gone outside of that. They could have gone with Johnson. When I was talking about it, Jahdae Barron went right before the Steelers pick, but that was when I was looking at it a little bit ahead. Or the Nick, I always mess up his last name when it's Emanwari, I think is the right way to say it,
right.
Who is interesting right now because I'm looking at the TV with the Ravens selection to see who the Steelers have to deal with 2 games.
Malachi Starks.
They took the other safety that was some people thought might have been the better one. It was a debate on which one it was. But then again, Emanwari was more like a Kyle Hamilton, who they already had. Anyway,
right.
So those were players that I would have been fine with the Steelers taking at 21. But the whole time it was just, for the last 5 or 6 picks going on there, come on, let Derrick Harmon get there, let Derrick Harmon get there, let Derrick Harmon get there, and he did.
Yeah. Bryan, what about you? Were there any other positions you could see the Steelers going in?
Yeah, corner. And boy, am I glad even though they're saying he's dealing with a knee injury. I'm glad Will Johnson is not in Baltimore. I'm going to say that right now. I could have seen them going corner. I could have seen them going. I really didn't see them going wide receiver, but I didn't see them going running back either. But I disagree with some people that say you never select a running back in the first round. If he's good enough and you like him, you take him. And if he's a game breaker, you go ahead and take him. So I will say that. I know some other people are emphatic the other way, but the Steelers made the correct pick. They had a glaring hole at defensive tackle, and the other guys that were the defensive linemen that were there, Benton's a special player. He's going to be good, but he's on an island when you have a guy like Cam Hayward getting older. Now, Cam Hayward had a beautiful year last year. However, how many more of them are you going to be able to have out of him? And there's just a lot of journeymen and non-starters really waiting in the wings. So, and that includes Logan Lee, who was drafted last year. So I'm going to say right now that you had to go ahead and get a defensive lineman here, and you really got the right one. Kenneth Grant wasn't available, and I was good either way. But this is secretly the pick that I wanted. And I learned a long time ago when I wasn't excited over a pick like Casey Hampton. I wasn't excited over a pick like Alan Faneca and these trench guys. But my goodness, now you look back and you think things don't happen without guys like that. And you have a guy that's an architect in Andy Weidel of the trenches. He learned from Howie Roseman, and look at what they did and what their defensive line looks like. And Omar Khan is becoming an architect of that. And one more thing to say about the way they do business. For the past 3 years, the Steelers have selected a guy that they brought in on a visit. And that does matter. And this is a guy that they brought in for a visit. They knew they liked this guy. And he is a Pittsburgh Steeler. When Mike Tomlin says he is Steeler DNA, some people on Twitter are saying, I don't know what that means. I know what it means. He fits the blueprint of what a Pittsburgh Steeler is supposed to be.
I know a lot of fans, and this kind of popped up recently, were concerned about health with Derrick Harmon. There was a reported shoulder injury. Derrick Harmon, after he was drafted, he essentially said on the call with press that he has no idea where this injury news came from. Sometimes this stuff is crazy. And this is something that was said on the live stream. I think it was Rich, Dave's big bro. He said, remember last year when everyone was saying that there was a guy who had no ACLs and he was injury prone, and named Peyton Wilson. He'd never last in the NFL. He's the only rookie that didn't miss a game last year. And so I think sometimes these reports might pop up. There might be some validity to it. There might not be. He doesn't seem, that's Derrick Harmon, that it's a big deal to him, that he's never heard of where the shoulder injury came from. So I know that last year's Troy Falatanu, there was a similar story as well before the draft, or leading up to it, that there were some injury concerns. And we all know how his regular season panned out. What did we see him for 4 quarters? And that was it. So as a kind of a cautionary tale, but still Derrick Harmon says that he is fully healthy and he's good to go. Now, Dave, you listened to the press conference with Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan. Was there anything said that's worth noting, I should say?
Well, I listened to it as much as I could. As soon as I missed the very beginning of it because I was still recording the breaking news. But like I said, the whole thing that Coach Tomlin was like, didn't really see him as a nose tackle, but they were asked, was this one of those guys that, they're like, if he was there, we were going to take him. We weren't trading back. I think there was something said that they even had calls. But it was what you expected your head coach and GM to say in the press conference after.
Yeah. Bryan, is there anything else that sticks out about this selection for you?
He seems like a character guy. I've been following Cam Hayward on X, formerly known as Twitter, and he made a comment after Mark Cabali made the comment that we talked about before the show, how this gentleman, his mother is on life support, and he is driving to the hospital to let her know that he has been drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that is, when you hear something like that, you hear the heart of a guy like that. You could tell that the man has character as well in other things that I've seen. But when Cam Hayward saw that, he said, that's why this guy's a Pittsburgh Steeler. It's you've got to feel for this young man, but he's got all the heart that this team needs. So that's something that sticks out as well. But Oregon is a, I almost said franchise, but that's also what with NIL, what some of these college teams are becoming. But they are a team in the last 10 years. They're a program that is really putting it together and becoming a power. They've always had Nike money. They've always had a lot of that. But a guy like Harmon has been in a program that's been winning over the last few years, and he's a winner coming to Pittsburgh as well. I mean, I really think this ended up being a perfect storm, and Derrick Harmon was there all along, even though everybody from the outside thought that this was Shedeur Sanders. And that was just a whole bunch of malarkey, and I'm not talking about Mike.
Media matchmakers?
Yes. I went Mike Malarkey instead of media matchmaker. Triple M, baby. I mean, it was like the t-shirt, Jeff.
Guys, how entertaining was it to know what the pick was, to already have it where we got it on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and watch the TV? I was watching NFL Network. I know, Jeff, you're watching ESPN. I wonder how
I wasn't watching anything.
Oh, you weren't anymore?
No,
I don't know if Bryan was still watching ESPN. On NFL Network, it was all about, they were talking about quarterbacks. And I mean, we already knew they were taking Harmon, and just the lead up, all the Steelers are on the clock and everything was quarterback, all highlighting that. I'm like, just as I kept saying, people kept asking me that don't follow the Steelers. Oh, what are they see me wearing Steelers stuff. Oh, well, the Steelers are going to draft no, I don't think they're going to do it. Now, what could there have been do you think there was a possibility if the draft had gone differently and other people weren't there that they might have considered doing that in round one? I think they would have taken the calls to trade back and then see what happened. But it was just so entertaining to know that it was that defensive lineman and still hear the national media trying to force a quarterback on the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Of course. That's what
Atlanta gave up a number 1 pick to move back into the first round with Los Angeles. And that would have just been absolutely amazing for the Steelers to have 2 number 1 picks next year. But, that might have not been offered there as well. We thought a lot of people were going to go ahead of the Steelers because of all this media matchmaking with quarterbacks, thinking that that's what they were going to do. But they got the balls, like Omar Khan said, but they thought he was too good to pass up. Yeah. They're talking about this guy already as a 10-year player.
We'll see. We shall see. I'll tell you what, we're going to take a quick break. For those watching live, don't worry, we're not going anywhere. When we come back, we'll start taking a look at what to look forward to, maybe in day 2. We'll be right back. All right, Steeler fans, thanks for being patient. We are here, finish up this show, this round 1 roundtable as the Steelers take Derrick Harmon. So with that out of the way, I got to say, I would not be shocked if the Steelers, there are a lot of people that are saying, I wish that they would have taken a bigger bodied nose tackle type. There's a lot of people saying, I wish that Tomlin would have said that he could have played nose tackle. My response to that is that the Keanu Benton nose tackle experiment didn't work out the way we all thought it would. I could see them double dipping and still taking another defensive lineman. Dave, you agree or disagree?
And if they do, I think it's going to be one of the big boys who would have been a first or second round pick 20 years ago that now are just going the way of the fullback, as Coach Tomlin said in his press conference earlier this week, that therefore is a guy that would be in the 5th or 6th round. I could completely see them doing that. I would be 100% fine with them doing that. But if they don't, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. Bryan, what about you? Think they double dip?
Yeah, I really do, unless Daniel McCutcheon decides to make a comeback. So if he does,
Who's,
mean
who's Daniel
McCullers?
McCutcheon?
McCullers.
Oh, you tried. You tried.
Oh man, that joke would have been really good. That, that joke had all the makings. Oh,
The old shade tree, Daniel
Yeah.
McCullers.
All right. Now you know what I really think they would. And there's guys. There are some special guys that they could go ahead and get in a round 4 or a round 5. So as far as that goes, wait, do they still have a round 5 pick?
Yeah, they have one of everything except 2.
Okay,
Except
that's
for
right.
2, yeah.
So yeah, I could see that as a possibility. And at this point though, I don't really see them getting back into the second round. I think it might be a little tough at this point. But if you are going to get back into the second round, you're giving up next year, and you think that you're going to have extra draft capital for next year. I think that dream's dead, but you never know.
Dave, do you think that dream's dead? Them getting back into the second round?
Yeah, I do. I don't think that the only way you're getting back into the second round is then you're not going to have a third round pick. And you're going to have to give up another pick later in this draft and or something from next year that they'd be willing to do. I don't, we were talking on the live stream where the reports were that, the most they could get for George Pickens was a 4th. And we're like, then don't do it. And all you're doing, if you trade away somebody like George Pickens, all you're doing now is creating another need of something else that you have to draft. So if you're going to have extra picks next year from the compensatory picks, whether you use them as a package deal next year or anything, maybe next year is the time that you want to add that wide receiver. So therefore, I'm thinking that they're just going to hold true. I'd be delighted if they trade up, but I just don't know that they have the firepower to do it, to gain that one back.
Correct me if I'm wrong, and I know you guys will. Was the last time the Steelers didn't have a pick and traded into that round? Was that Isaiah Loudermilk?
That I know of, yeah.
Yes.
And that was a 5th round. They didn't have a 5th round pick, I believe.
And it takes the round better than that the year before. So if the Steelers want to use just a flat up 1 pick to get into the second round without anything else, they're giving up next year's first.
Yeah, it's not happening.
And they're not going to do that.
No.
Would you, like I said, would you give up everything, most of the picks that they have left? Would you give up 3, 5, and 7 to move up into 2? And then you would have 2, 4, 6, and that was it?
Probably not.
I don't think it's worth it.
Well, because that brings up the next part of this discussion, which is where do the Steelers go from here? They get a high pedigree defensive lineman, which is what we all said they needed. So you check that box. So in your opinion, if they don't have a second round pick, where do they go in the 3rd? Bryan, I'll let you go first. Where do you think, what position, not player, what position do you think they go in round 3?
Well, this is intriguing here. I don't think they take a quarterback in round 3. I really don't. I think that goes against exactly what they're looking at doing here. And I think the plan for 2026 makes a lot of sense, and I think they're looking at that. I still think they've got designs for Aaron Rodgers. I don't think that's dead. So if I think they're going to go for a certain player here, I'm probably thinking that they're legitimately actually going to look at wide receiver, or I think they're going to look at secondary. So either a pass catcher or a pass defender.
Okay. I'm going to go, and I'm going to see if Dave agrees with me. I think it's a running back.
I think it's a running back. Yeah, I think it's running back. I think in this class, that's where there's the big group of guys. That's where I still expect them to have some pretty good options available. If they don't go running back at 3, then they got to go running back at 4.
Yeah, and I think they could do that at 4, though. I think it's so deep that you can get a guy like the kid from Kansas State, DJ Giddens. I think that's a guy that you can get in the 4th round, possibly.
It kind of depends on if the run starts. If not, you got to go 3rd. So yeah, it 3rd or 4th is why I say it, depending on how it all falls. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people after running back and maybe wide receiver, if they're keeping Pickens, I could see them not drafting a receiver this year based on the fact too, that Roman Wilson will be back and healthy, hopefully. And so you're looking at, okay, a lot of people think just go defense, whether it's secondary, like you mentioned, Bryan. For me, I'm not giving up on adding to the offensive line, especially guard.
Yeah.
And even if it's a Mason McCormick-like pick, he's a 4th round draft pick last year. He wasn't expected to start as a rookie. If he was a long-term plan for when Isaac Seumalo leaves, okay, get another one of those guys. That's okay, because you do get them in the system and get them acclimated. And then it's a way that you don't ever have a gaping hole on the roster. So I'm not giving up on maybe a late round offensive guard, probably not a tackle, but an offensive guard, and seeing if that player can figure some things out and be a potential answer down the road. But, all right, this has been a crazy day one with a lot of trades and a lot of movement, both within the division, with across the league. Just pretty crazy stuff. Dave, do you have any final thoughts on the selection of Derrick Harmon?
Yeah, I like this. I said this in on the live stream. I'm like, wouldn't it be something? Now, I don't like that the Cleveland Browns picked up another 1st round pick for next year. I don't like that. Yeah, the Browns can suck it, but they don't take who many believe is a generational talent. They trade back for what is believed to be the best defensive lineman in the draft. But honestly, if you ask me to rank my favorite defensive linemen using all of them, I had Grant and Harmon ahead of Graham, who the Browns took at 5. So I would love nothing more than for the Browns to draft a defensive lineman at 5 and the Steelers to draft one at 21 and end up with the better player. That would bring me great joy. I know some of you that are disappointed about quarterback. I'm just going to leave you with this. I know a lot of the national media was saying this week, I kept hearing people saying, the Steelers, you've got the 3rd best quarterback in your division. You've got to do something. Well, even if they did something, they still weren't going to have any better than the 3rd best quarterback in the division. So if the answer's not there, you don't reach for something that's not the answer. To me, they made the smart pick that this is real. This is when you see that the team isn't just knee-jerk reaction to things. This was the smart pick. This one, you saw it for months that this is where they should be going, and they followed through, and it fell right for them. So I'm pretty happy.
All right. Bryan, any final thoughts on Derrick Harmon?
This pick to me just seems absolutely right. It seems like the guy. I want to talk about what Dave said, and I'm going to not only agree with him, but I'm going to pile on along with what Dave's saying. So I'm going to put more meat on the sandwich here. I absolutely feel, and I think there's some pundits out there that feel that Mason Graham would have not been Mason Graham without Kenneth Grant. And I really think that he was protected by having that player. Now, he is a fine player. I'm not saying he's not, but I don't think he is the number 5 pick in the draft. I really don't. So when Dave ranks them, yeah, I have Grant and Harmon and then Graham and Nolan. That's kind of what I have going here, and we've seen it. Now, there are picks in the first round. There's, I would say 25% of the picks in the first round probably are not going to work out to your expectations. But I think the Steelers do have a top 50. When I say top 50, a top 50% pick in the first round. It's a workman-like player. It's something that I really think was a glaring need when a lot of people didn't really think it was glaring. And if you pass this up, you're making a huge mistake. So this is going to give you a chance to have that kind of guy that can be around for 10 years. Cam Hayward was not considered generational player when he was picked at 31 in 2011, but he's been around an awful long time, and he's a guy that has gotten done and been a hallmark of this team, and could become one of the longest tenured Steelers of all time. I'm not saying that this guy is Cam Hayward, but he might be Cam Hayward 2.0, and an opportunity to be just like Cam Hayward. He might be Cam Hayward light right now, but I like it. I want to talk about Grant real quick, but it's not Kenneth Grant. I'm going to talk about Charles Grant, the giant from Mike Tomlin's alma mater, William and Mary. If they do go offensive tackle in the 3rd or 4th round, get this behemoth.
All right, I'm going to finish this up with, a lot of folks were clamoring for the Steelers to trade back, rightfully so, understood. And the Steelers did admit that they did have calls about trading away the pick in the 21st overall pick. And the only thing is that this goes to show you, whether you agree with what the Steelers do or not and how they evaluate talent, that's neither here nor there. For the Steelers, they were not going to pass up on Derrick Harmon. They liked him enough. It wasn't just because he was the last of that top tier of defensive linemen on the board. They liked him enough that they said, we're not going to entertain these potential trades because we want to get our guy. That means something to me. And so, there's always calls being made and everything like that. They wanted Derrick Harmon. They got Derrick Harmon, and we'll see what he can do this year. Let's see what else they'll have in store for the rest of the draft. I want to remind everyone to check out our podcast platform so that you get Dave Schofield's breaking news podcast all weekend long. Tomorrow morning, Friday morning, I will have my Let's Ride podcast. We'll have that a little bit later in the morning, but still you can check that out. My thoughts on how day 1 progressed. And then we'll have a live stream again tomorrow night. We'll have another roundtable after rounds 2 and 3. Day 2 is in the books. And then we'll do the same thing on Saturday. And it's going to be a lot of fun. It's a draining weekend. It's a tiring weekend, but it is a lot of fun. Hopefully y'all check us out. And I can't not say to check out steelcurtainnetwork.com. Really excited for you all to check out the website. Looks great. Has a great comment section. steelcurtainnetwork.com. All right, Dave, this isn't the preview, so I don't think you have to send us out, but I think that's a wrap for this one, isn't it?
That sounds good.
All right. We'll see you tomorrow on another roundtable. Take it easy, everyone.
Steel Curtain Network. Get it.
Everybody else gets a little tight.